Well, good morning, folks. It's the 8th of January, and Happy New Year and all of that. I'm back, and hopefully this time I'll keep up a more regular video output for the year. That's certainly one of the New Year's resolutions, if I can. I'm out here, it's about 7:30 in the morning. I'm just walking around the track on the local football pitch, and it's bitterly cold. But in actual fact, this is probably my favourite time of year, and especially when the weather is like this. I love a good cold winter, and I know it has its inconveniences and so on, but I mean, in my mind, this is what winter is all about. The winter up till now has been exceptionally mild. We had a little bit of frost kind of maybe around the start. There was 1 or 2 days of frost in November and a little bit of frost then in December. But overall, the weather has been just exceptionally mild. And in fact, over the Christmas break, which I hope you all had a nice Christmas, over the Christmas break, the bees were actually very active. So there, kind of towards the end of the Christmas break, I went out hefting hives, which I had hefted just before Christmas. And the nukes in particular had suddenly got very, very light. So I've had to give 1 or 2 of those a bit of fondant just to bring the weights up. But after this cold spell, I'll be going around checking them again. Now, when in cold like this, the cluster will tighten up and they'll actually consume very little food. But it's during the mild spells that they will consume, and I reckon it was so mild that a lot of the colonies might have actually been brooding. Maybe some of you might have looked down into some of your hives, and you might confirm that. Just leave a comment down below if you have done that. I personally don't do it. But I suppose it is interesting to know whether the colonies are brooding or not. And I reckon they were. If you hold your hand over the cluster, if you lift the lid off, especially on the nukes, you know, the perspex board on some of those poly nukes, you'll actually feel the heat of the cluster. And generally, I always feel anyway, that if you can feel a massive heat difference, it would seem to suggest to me that there is brooding going on, because otherwise the cluster just tends to kind of it stops all movement, and right in the heart of it, it'll always kind of generate a bit of heat naturally just from the body of the bees being there in such a tight cluster. But if you're feeling that a massive kind of heat rising up out of the colony or out of the cluster, and the cluster is moving, I think that that's a sign that there is some brooding going on there. But then again, I mean, look, you see videos on YouTube, particularly in the States where it gets exceptionally cold, of people going out with thermal imagers and so on, and picking up a heat source right in the heart of a cluster of hives. So, I mean, maybe my theory is completely off. So, I'm out here trying to get into better habits for the year. Over the last 2 years or so, my kind of outdoor activities apart from my beekeeping have kind of dwindled off a good bit. I used to do a lot of hill walking, and I was into running and that, and I haven't really been doing it over the last couple of years really. So just trying to get into the habit of getting back out first thing in the morning. So for now it's a walk around the track and the football field. So yeah, if I can keep that up, that'll be good. But anyway, in the meantime, while we're doing that, let's have a little chat. I've got asked a couple of times in comments about treatments, and I have mentioned it in videos, but I just address it here now because it is the middle of winter, and a lot of you are probably, doing a treatment in the middle of winter now, that especially during this cold spell here in Ireland. You might think that now is the time to give a treatment, and I've been asked in comments to some of my videos about treatments, and this I know is going to be controversial, and again I've said it a few times in previous videos, but I don't treat. It's a decision or a choice I made many years ago when I started back keeping bees. I treated for the first year, and I kind of half treated for the second year, but after that I just wasn't happy with the kind of the effects it was having on the bees and the results I was getting. I didn't, at that time I started out with 6 colonies, and I built it up. I got nukes that first year, and I split them up during the summer, and I treated with ApiGuard. Now I know there are better treatments out there than ApiGuard now, but I just saw the bees got very stressed. I lost a number of queens as well, and just the whole experience didn't work out very well for me. So I decided, no, that's it, I'm not treating, I'm going to give this a chance and see if the bees survive it. And lo and behold, I still have bees, and yeah, my colony numbers have gone up and down, but that's for other reasons, not because I don't treat. It's because I kind of got too big too quickly in a sense, and within the second year I had kind of built it up to 40-50 colonies, and that's full-size production colonies. And then we started a young family and building a house and all of that, and I suppose just obviously, as beekeeping isn't my like some other YouTubers, well-known YouTubers, beekeeping isn't my full-time occupation, and I really admire those that do it as a full-time occupation. And in fact, I suppose when I was younger that would have been one of my dreams, but I suppose it just didn't materialise that way. And as a lot of Irish beekeepers would know, I suppose Ireland isn't really a place where you want to rely on beekeeping as your primary source of income. So so I suppose beekeeping had to kind of take a little bit of a back step, and I just cut my colony numbers down to more manageable levels. And so that's just an explanation as to why my colony numbers kind of have gone up and down over the years. But you know, when I'm in full build mode, and when I do all the manipulations that are needed during the summer months, I find that there is an impact. I'm not going to say there isn't, but the impact isn't as critical as it's made out to be. Now, I'm just going to say this. I'm not here to tell anybody not to treat. And, you know, I'm not in that kind of brigade that says you don't treat your bees. I'm just telling you what I do. And I don't treat my bees. And again, I know it's a controversial point. And by all means, you know, if you disagree with me or if you agree, put it in the comments below, because, you know, I am interested in reading comments and people's point of views, even if that's a dig at me. My ethos in it when I'm keeping my bees, I try not to sort of spend too much time on the weak colonies. You know, you kind of want to weed out those weak colonies. You don't want to be promoting weak colonies or poor quality colonies in your apiaries. And so I only want survivors and bees that can survive through 3-4 seasons. You know, in fact, if you see Gwyneth Griffith's videos there, he's been out with David Wainwright on a couple of occasions. And one of his videos, they went out to one of David Wainwright's out apiaries. And David Wainwright indicated that he gets, I think it was 3 to 4, maybe 5 years out of a colony before it dwindles and becomes kind of obsolete. And then he just renews it with a fresh nuke, drops on site. And that is kind of exactly the way I do it and have been doing it. I find colonies naturally kind of fizzle out, no matter what you do with them. Even if they kind of supersede their queens or whatever, there's kind of that thing that, you know, after the 4th or 5th year, that colony will actually do something that, you know, it'll swarm itself out, or it'll just start dying back, it'll whatever. And some might say that's as a result of Varroa. Some might argue that with me. But, I mean, if you watch that video with David Wainwright, Gwen Griffith's video with David Wainwright, you will know that David Wainwright treats his bees. And yet, he says that naturally his colonies will kind of phase out after about 5 years. That's all I'm going to say on it. this weather just glorious. I don't know if I said this already, but this is in fact my favourite time of year. I love this kind of weather, and so, you know, despite the inconveniences and that come with it, I think it's just glorious, and it's lovely to be out in it. Would you believe there's actually a hive up there with bees flying? 3 or 4 bees coming out, probably just getting rid of debris, and then flying back in. They're not going too far away from the hive now or anything, but they're coming out. They're getting hit by the bit of sun. So another question I have got asked is, what preparations do I make for the winter? And I did mean to do a video on it earlier, just never got round to it, but I'll just answer it now. I suppose this year in particular I fed all my nukes quite considerably, but I did make up a couple of late season nukes. Normally, I suppose what I have been doing in the past was I would assess the situation and I might give a small feed coming kind of towards the end of the autumn period to the nukes, but generally the ivy flow has kind of pulled them through. The full size colonies, I don't generally tend to feed them coming into the winter. Now you'll notice this site here, the majority of the colonies are actually in poly hives. I find the poly hives are great, but I don't necessarily notice a massive difference either between the poly hives and, say, wooden hives with, say, colony survival over the winter period or anything. Or, you know, I don't particularly notice much of a difference either in stores consumption, you know. And if you look inside the, you know, if I lifted the lid on the poly box there and looked under the perspex screen, I mean, there isn't a sign suddenly that, oh, this box is so well insulated that the colony is now, you know, the colony is moving around, in comparison to a wooden box if you were to do that, where they'd be just completely still. So, like, I don't necessarily make any special preparations for the winter, other than feeding the nukes. And then during the course of the winter, obviously I'll assess the colonies, and coming towards, you know, the end of the autumn season and the end of the ivy flow, I will heft colonies just to make sure that they have put on the weight. And obviously if there are some kind of colonies that are questionable, I'll just make a note of that, and come this side of the winter period, you know, just after Christmas, I then start putting fondant on if it's needed. If I have considered kind of going into the winter time that it might be needed, then I just put it on. The nukes this year, well, actually I kind of found that this year the ivy flow was quite poor for me. The bees, just in this particular site here, didn't really do well on the ivy flow. Not entirely sure why that is, but we were getting hit by kind of prevailing wind up here towards this side, and it, you know, you could see the impact it was having on the bees when they were flying into the hives, or when they were coming across the site here. And you know, you could see the bees suddenly kind of coming into the site, and then all of a sudden either been blown down low or literally nearly almost been blown backwards. So look, that's not great for bees, because they're nearly consuming that energy to try and make it back to the hive. So before they even get to the hive, they've consumed a lot of the energy that they have gathered. You know, I'm going to have to make some arrangements this year, I think, to address that, because we seem to be getting hit with more and more you know, windier type weather during the summer periods. As regards the colony preparations, again, it's just down to monitoring the feed. I've already said I don't treat, so that's not something that kind of I do to prepare for the winter. So what else do I do during the winter? Well, basically it's kind of getting prepared for the season ahead. I make up my hive bodies. As you can see, as I've said, you know, in this site I mostly use polys, but I do have wooden boxes in use as well, and I do like to kind of keep a couple of wooden boxes. I tend to keep the poly boxes here at the home site, and I've had a couple of other sites where I've had poly boxes left out over the winter periods, and you know, you saw a video there that I did last year with some damage that was done to a poly box, and that was in an out apiary. So I just think it's kind of easier to just keep an eye on my poly boxes here. Poly boxes have a tendency to, it's not the first time that I've had a poly box attacked, and I'm sure it won't be the last. So I think it's easier just to have the poly boxes here at the home site, and then I can keep an eye to them. I move them out obviously if I'm going to bring them to heather or whatever, but for the winter period, just prefer to keep them here. So yeah, wooden boxes are less susceptible to animal damage or vermin damage, so that's kind of that's it. So I like to maintain a stock of wooden boxes, and you know, as you're kind of increasing colony numbers as well, you just have to keep on top of building your boxes, and there's no point in looking for them when you need them. It's best to have them done, ready to go. So that's what I'm doing. I'm assembling wooden boxes at the moment, and I'll be assembling frames then as well to fill those boxes. I won't put foundation in the frames until near the time I need it, because I'm always afraid of the foundation kind of going stale. But hopefully, you know, I have 40 odd nukes here at this site, and I have several other nukes at the other sites, and hopefully I need to, or you know, early on in the spring I'll be transferring the majority of them into full-size boxes, and that's going to be, again, it's going to ramp up my numbers big time in comparison to what I've had for the last 3 or 4 years anyway. So that's it, that's the future. So if you like this video, or if you've watched my other videos and you like them and you want to see more, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. It helps me out because it lets me know what, you know, people like to see first off, and also it'll help you and let me know that people would like to keep up to date with what I'm producing. So thanks for watching, and thanks to all my subscribers so far. Let me know in the comments if there's anything in particular that you'd like covered in one of my videos, and I'll try and do that. Okay, so until the next one, bye for now. I'm going to take a walk around and enjoy a little bit more of this weather. Thanks for watching.